Welcome back to Unity training for theatre. This is lesson 2.5, chapter 2, lesson 5. We're going to talk about the details panel, which is what I call the inspector, because I think it's usually details in other programs. So the inspector panel, which is this one on the right here. Now, we've actually covered it in all the other lessons, but just for covering us off by chapter in case you're doing things piecemeal, this is where the details panel will be, and it's blank. Because it's contextual. The idea is you click on something and it will load up information that's relevant to that object. So I'm going to start by clicking on my directional lights here on the left, and you see how instantly it loads up information that's relevant to the light source. Most objects have a transform node at the top. That's where you can change position. So you can sort of click and drag on the X here or the Y to change position. You're not seeing anything moving because I'm moving a directional light. It's everywhere at once. If you double click on it, it will show you where it is. There you go. So I can move it around. And directional light means it's everywhere. It's not relative to position. What you can do is change its rotation, and you'll see light moving. Literally doing a sunset and sunrise. I think if we spin around, look for the sun, there it is. So there you go. I can do a rotation. And the directional light is linked to the sun in this case in the standard scene. And you can see other lights moving around. So there you go. So I've got some control there. I've got options here for like changing what sort of light source it is. I can change its color. So there you go. You see how it's changing the light on the chair there. Green. It's not really what we want though, is it? And then we got add component. Add components, because you can use quite a lot. You can click and drag components or copy them from other things. But if I click add component, I could add into my light. Let's find an example. I don't know why I would, but I could add an audio component. So I can add an audio source to my lights. So rather than having it in a separate audio component, I could actually add that component to my light source, and then this now becomes a light source and an audio source. If you want to get rid of it, you right click and you go remove component. If you want to change something back to the way it was, you can right click and do reset, and it puts it back to its default. So I can put its transform back the way it was. There you go, it's moved it all the way back to the sun being down at 0, 0. Let's just make that go up a little bit. There you go. And there's something else you can do that's really cool. I can copy components. So let's say I've got a second directional light. I'm going to copy that and paste it. I've got two directional lights. I'm going to move this one over here, and I'm going to rotate it around. And actually what I'm going to do, I'm going to change the color. It's going to be easy to show this with change of color. So I've got a red light, and I'm going to make its intensity a bit higher. So I'm just going to click on that and drag it up. So you can see how that's glowing there. So now I've got two light sources in here. I've got one pointing sort of in that direction, which is my sunlight. I'm going to make the intensity a little bit higher on that one as well. And I've got red coming from the other direction with this directional light. Now, I don't know why you'd want to do this, but if you wanted to copy information from one component to another in a different source, if you right click and do copy component, I could paste that component back into this object here, back into here. Or I could click on my first directional light. If I right click on the light, I can do paste component values, which will then turn that one into the same as the other source. Let's make my sun go red. So it will take all the details that you've saved into this component and copy it across. I'm going to undo that though. You can also add this to something else. So for instance, if I created say a point light, I could right click, paste component values, and that's turned that back into a directional light rather than a point light. I could also take take another object. So let's take my camera. I could do paste component as new, and it will paste that information into my camera. So now my camera has a directional light attached to it. So whichever way my camera faces, it's got a light coming out in the same direction, which is red, and it's based on the information we put in to the other one. So that's quite handy. You do that quite a lot, especially with scripts. You might want to copy that script, copy that component. It's going to stick it in my directional light. So I can right click on there, post component as new, and it's added the camera script to that directional light. And there you go, it's popped up there. If I spin that around, you can see it's upside down, but that's now looking at the world. There we go. So you can sort of move things around. So everything's very modular. So the name here, like if you created a point light, all it's doing, let's just create a point light. what it's doing is creating a basic node, an empty, and we're going to cover empties later, and it sticks in your light and your transform node as automatically. If I deleted that, remove component, you can't lose that one, that has to stay. I've now just got an empty component. It says point light, but it's now just the equivalent of an empty, which is one of these. It's just got nothing in it. We'll talk about why that's important later. So the inspector panel is really powerful. It's where everything that you're dealing with lives. You do all your work in there, and you can click on anything in the hierarchy to bring up different things for the inspector. You can click on anything in your project browser and bring up information about the raw asset that you can change. That then is referenced into everything else in the scene. So it's worth checking everything against the inspector. That's all there is to say about the inspector at this point. We'll be just using it all the time as we're working through all of our project work. Okay. In the next lesson, we're going to do saving scenes, which again, we've sort of covered a little bit earlier, but we're going to go into just a little more detail, cover it off as an individual chapter. So we'll see you in the next lesson.